He doesn't pull away because you're too clingy. He doesn't pull away because you're not pretty enough. He pulls away because the moment you became someone he could lose, his brain registered that as a threat to his safety. And when your brain registers a threat, it has only one job: make you escape it. This pattern has a name. It's called avoidant attachment. And it's not a personal failure on your part. It's a nervous system pattern that was built years before you met him. The problem is, you didn't know that was happening. So you did what made sense. You blamed yourself. You tried harder. You became less available. You rearranged your entire emotional life around a pattern that had nothing to do with your worth. This is about the gap between what you've been taught to believe, that you can love someone into staying, and what actually happens inside the nervous system when someone with an avoidant pattern gets close. The question is, what if everything you've been doing to keep him is the exact thing that makes him run? Before we continue, have you ever recognized yourself in this pattern? In the moment you reached out and watched him pull back? In the realization that your presence felt like pressure to him, not comfort? In the cycle where the closer you tried to get, the more he disappeared, until you started disappearing first, just to keep him from leaving? There's a specific reason this pattern happens. It's not random. It's not about you. And once you understand how it actually works, what triggers it, how to recognize it, what to do when it happens, you stop blaming yourself. You stop trying to fix it. And most importantly, you stop creating it. The setup, what it looked like before you understood. It started, like it always does, with ease. The first 3 weeks with him felt different. He replied quickly. He initiated. He said things like, "I really like you." He made plans. He showed up. There were no red flags because there was no distance yet. When you're in the beginning, closeness feels like the entire point. It feels like what you've been waiting for. And it was real. He wasn't lying. He did like you. But there was something else happening underneath that early ease, something you couldn't see yet. Looking back, the first sign was already there. It just didn't look like a warning yet. It was small. A text that took 6 hours to arrive instead of 6 minutes. A date where he was a little quieter than usual. A moment where you said something vulnerable, and he changed the subject so smoothly you almost didn't notice it. You filed these away. You told yourself it was nothing. People have bad days. People get busy. You were trying not to be the kind of woman who overanalyzes every interaction. So you did what made sense. You didn't mention it. You matched his energy downward. You made yourself smaller, easier, less demanding. You thought, if I stay light and available, he'll stay engaged. And for a while, it worked. But then something shifted. He stopped initiating. Not dramatically. Gradually. The good morning texts became intermittent. The plans became vague. Let's hang sometime. Not I want to see you Friday. And then came the detail that made it impossible to treat this as an isolated case. One night, after you'd spent the evening together, a good evening, you texted him, "I really enjoyed tonight. I'm falling for you." And he read it immediately. You watched the 3 dots appear. And then, they disappeared. He didn't respond for 11 hours. And when he did, it was, "Yeah, you're cool. Let's see where this goes." That's the moment you should have understood what was happening. But instead, you did what 90% of women do in that moment. You blamed yourself. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe I shouldn't have said I'm falling for him. Maybe I should have waited longer. Maybe I should act like I care less. And after that, there was no looking away. Because now you were managing his emotions and his withdrawal. Now you were the one controlling the distance. And the irony is, the moment you started pulling back, he relaxed. He texted more. He seemed happier. So you learned a lesson. A false one. You learned, if you want him to stay close, you have to act far away. The turning point, the pattern revealed. Here's what happens neurologically when someone with avoidant attachment experiences closeness. Closeness activates their threat detection system, not consciously, but at the level of their body. Their amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear, reads your emotional intimacy as a threat to their independence, and it floods their nervous system with adrenaline. Their chest gets tight. Their breathing gets shallow. They feel an overwhelming urge to escape. And because they can't articulate this, because they don't even know it's happening, they create distance the only way they know how. The first sign, withdrawal through topic change. You say something that opens an emotional door. Maybe you ask him what he's thinking about, or you share something you're scared of. He listens. Then, suddenly, did you see that video? Or, I need to call my friend. Or, I'm pretty tired tonight. He's not rejecting you. His nervous system is protecting him from the closeness he can't handle. So he manufactures distance through a conversation shift. The second sign, emotional unavailability disguised as logic. He says things like, I don't like being pushed. This is why I need space. Or, I don't know if I'm ready for something serious. He frames it as his limitation. But what's actually happening is, your closeness triggered his threat response, and now he's narrating it as a rational assessment of what he can handle. He's not lying to you. He's explaining his nervous system's reaction as if it's a conscious choice. The third sign, and this is the one most people miss, physical withdrawal disguised as necessity. He doesn't want to spoon like he did last week. He gets up from the couch when you move closer. He stops initiating touch. And because these are small, reasonable-sounding moves, you don't immediately recognize them as part of the pattern. But they are. His body is creating the distance his nervous system demands. And then came the moment that made it impossible to unsee the pattern. You finally recognize the cycle. Closeness triggers his withdrawal. Your withdrawal triggers his re-engagement. And the moment you move toward him again, the cycle restarts. And you realized, this isn't going to end. This is the relationship. This is all he can do. And that's when the question became impossible to avoid. What am I doing here? Not what did I do wrong, but what am I actually doing by staying in this cycle? The real consequence, the lesson that doesn't resolve cleanly. Here's what the pursuit withdrawal cycle actually costs you. It rewires your nervous system to believe that love is something you have to chase. It teaches your body that closeness triggers abandonment. And it makes you believe that your worth is dependent on someone else's capacity to stay. That's not a small cost. That's a fundamental reorganization of how you experience intimacy. Most women in this cycle eventually do one of three things. First, they become hypervigilant. Every text, every silence, every mood shift becomes data. They start analyzing his patterns obsessively, not because they're clingy, but because their nervous system learned that the stakes are high. They're trying to predict the withdrawal before it happens so they can control it. They can't, but they keep trying. Second, they start managing their own feelings. They stop reaching out. They stop being vulnerable. They stop asking for what they need. They become cool. They become low maintenance. And they call this progress. But what they've actually done is abandon themselves. They've made the relationship safe for him by making it empty for them. And third, the one nobody talks about, they start developing resentment that they can't quite name. Because they're mad at him for not being capable of closeness. But they're more mad at themselves for staying in something that requires them to be smaller than they are. The thing about the pursuit withdrawal cycle is that it doesn't resolve. It escalates or it ends. One person decides to stop participating. And usually, that person has to be you. Because the avoidantly attached person isn't going to wake up one day and say, I'm ready to be close now. His nervous system is running the show, and his nervous system learned a long time ago that closeness equals danger. You can't talk him out of that. You can't love him out of it. You can't become the right version of yourself that makes him feel safe. Only he can decide to work with his own patterns. The takeaway, what this means and why it matters. Remember at the beginning when we asked, what if everything you've been doing to keep him is the exact thing that makes him run? The answer is, it is. And that's not your failure. That's the design of the pattern. His nervous system needs distance to feel safe. Your nervous system needs closeness to feel safe. You can't rewire both of you. And you shouldn't have to choose between your own safety and his. But here's what changes everything. When you understand that his withdrawal is about his nervous system, not about your value, you stop blaming yourself. The pattern is no longer a reflection of whether you're enough. It's a reflection of whether he's capable of meeting you. And those are two completely different questions. So here are two things to do the next time you notice the pattern. First, recognize it without judgment. The moment you feel him pulling away, that's data. It's not a crisis. It's a signal. Your nervous system is saying, something shifted. That's information. Acknowledge it. Don't ignore it. Don't manage it. Just notice it. Second, state a boundary once, clearly, and then keep it. Not, I feel like you're pulling away. Why are you doing this? That's reaching while pretending not to reach. Instead, I've noticed when closeness happens, distance follows. I'm not going to chase that pattern. I need a partner who can move toward intimacy, not away from it. If that's not possible for you right now, I'm going to take care of myself by stepping back. And then you mean it. You don't reread his response. You don't look for signs he's coming back. You state the boundary. You keep it. And you watch what he does with that information. Sometimes, when someone encounters someone who doesn't chase, who doesn't reach and doesn't blame them, but also doesn't manage their emotions, something shifts. They start to feel safe because there's no pressure. Sometimes they don't. And you have your answer. The natural close. If you've lived this pattern, if you've felt someone pull away exactly when you got close, and you've spent months or years trying to figure out what you did wrong, I want you to know this. That wasn't about your capacity to love. It was about their capacity to receive it. And the moment you understand that difference, you stop chasing. You stop blaming yourself. And you start looking for someone who doesn't need you to disappear in order to feel safe. That person exists. But you won't find them while you're running after someone who's running away. Drop that in the comments. No judgment, just recognition. If content like this stays with you, if understanding the why behind what happens actually changes how you see your own patterns, subscribe. There's more coming. Thanks for watching.